Hey, welcome back to Gold Derby. It's Oscar night. Joyce and I are burning literally the midnight oil. It's midnight right now on the
We
East
yeah, we
Coast.
we're starting to set midnight, so it's actually April 26th now.
Wow. We the Oscars just finished with Anthony Hopkins winning Best Actor over Chadwick Boseman. A humongous, maybe not, but I mean, seemingly a humongous upset. Certainly for laymen, maybe who are watching the Oscars. I think a lot of experts have been moving towards Anthony Hopkins away from Chadwick Boseman. A wild ending to an Oscars that was unlike any other, that had Best Picture announced third to last for Nomadland, which won Best Picture. I got none of the last three awards right in my predictions because I had not Nomadland winning. As you know, I went out on a limb, Joyce, for Promising Young Woman. Didn't work. And then we were both wrong on Best Actress, which went to Frances McDormand. And then Anthony Hopkins. I know you would wanted to switch to
I
Anthony.
did, and, this is just something I'm just gonna have to live with. So, I and also this afternoon, I did, what I do when I can't decide where to eat, and that's flip a coin.
Mhm.
So I did that for both lead categories, and then I actually had, like, semifinals for actress, obviously. Because
Sure.
there's 4 of them, sorry, Vanessa Kirby. And then I had Carey Mulligan heads defeating Viola Davis tails. And then I was like, should I switch? And I even like slacked you, like, should I switch? And then I did it for actor too between Anthony Hopkins and Chadwick Boseman, and it was Anthony Hopkins.
And, that coin was right.
I know, but then I changed the wrong one because I was like, I can't change both of them because of a coin.
Let's.
I changed the wrong one, so I changed from Andrew Day to Carey Mulligan. So that was just a complete wash. It
Yeah,
didn't
you
matter.
still would have lost, so it's
Yeah.
fine.
So I should have done actor. I should have listened, to my coin that never fails me when I don't know where to eat. So, and I've always been happy with what it chose. And, but I'm happy for Anthony Hopkins, even though he wasn't there. But he tweeted a very nice video this
Mhm.
afternoon. So, um, and yeah, that's a very deserving win. Not a great ending for the show itself since he wasn't there and Joaquin Phoenix just had to say goodnight to everyone. But in some ways, I'm kind of glad that Anthony Hopkins won because I felt like a lot of people were being very dismissive of his BAFTA win 2 weeks ago, like writing it off as just a British thing. And I have been saying, even though I didn't end up predicting him, like it's a lot closer. Like, do not write this off as just a British thing because the father is peaking at the right time. Like we've like numerous times have just been sort of like dunking on the father for being such a late release because it came out like 13 months after premiere at Sundance
Mhm.
over a year ago. But you know what? Sony Pictures Classics played their cards right. It
Yeah,
won
jokes on
tonight.
jokes on me for sure. Because I was like, oh my god, this movie's been out. It came first premiere 14 months ago, and now
Yeah.
we have to talk about it still.
And like
But
it
no,
had
it.
such like a roller coaster run just because like certain people were seeing it like I saw it in the fall in October and still wasn't out yet, and then it kept missing, and it got those 4 Globe nominations, didn't win anything, and it kept missing guilds. I still believed in it though because I predicted all 6 of its
Mhm.
nominations even though it missed like editing guild, and it didn't hit PGA. But it they I think like they knew like they had like a real contender here and they held it off, and it was like such a long season, so it was like the last thing. I mean, I don't know when voters saw it. I think they would have sent screeners way earlier, but I think like we kind of knew something might have been happening when it hit the public a couple weeks ago, and everyone was just tweeting about like how amazing Anthony Hopkins is,
Mhm.
and its ratings like on like IMDb are off the roof, which is crazy for this
Right.
movie. So it's like hitting the public. There's passion for it, and then we saw those like anonymous Oscar ballots. It's Glenn Close and Olivia Colman all over again.
Absolutely. You had said that a lot, and I think a lot of the seemingly every Oscar ballot, anonymous ballot, was, boy, my favorite performance is Anthony Hopkins, but I think Chadwick Boseman's going to win because of like what that would mean, and like obviously like as a tribute to his performance, which is also great, and X, Y, and Z, and like that was it, and it ended up being maybe that like more people were vote when they were voting, they were like, well, if Chadwick Boseman's going to win anyway, I'll just vote for Anthony Hopkins because I like his performance better. And I kind of think that's really what happened. And like you said, I mean, the momentum is a huge thing here because I just feel like even if the like the father came out in theaters actually first, I think, before it even hit VOD. It came out at like the end of February, right before or right after the nominations, I guess, or right before voting closed or whatever it was. And then it kind of hit VOD later in March. I kind of wonder, like, if you're a voter, you definitely saw Ma Rainey in like, I don't know, October or right, or September, maybe October probably of like
I mean,
last
it
year.
started screening in no, I saw it in November.
So if you saw it in November, you're
Out
probably not going to revisit it, right? Like you saw it once, you got it. If you're waiting to see The Father, even though it premiered over a year and over a year ago at Sundance, it really wasn't. Maybe it wasn't screened a lot or whatever. If you were waiting to watch and you watched in the last like 2 months, it's fresher in your mind certainly, and like that obviously really helped. And I think the momentum was just there, and like you know. We'll talk about best actress too. I mean, those are maybe the two best performances actually won, and in the end, no matter what the narratives were, or like the very compelling arguments for any of the other contenders, people just voted for the stuff they liked the best. And that's what happened here,
Yeah,
perhaps.
I think it's another lesson that like passion trumps narrative.
Hmm.
So it's and like so many people are like, Chad is still gonna win just because his narrative is like stronger than even like Glenn Close's 2 years ago. But also like to that point about like the release dates, like we knew Ma Rainey wasn't strong. Like if it was a stronger film,
That's the
maybe
other thing, right?
would have revisited it or been more top of mind. I mean, we've seen in past seasons like movies that have been out longer and they're able to sustain the momentum all the way through. But Ma Rainey missed Best Picture nomination and adapted screenplay, and it seemed like it was like a film that people just like parts of, and which I understand why a lot of people are predicting it to win 4 Oscars because it was like it had 2 locked craft categories and then it could have won 2 leads, and that stat holds. Like no film has won both lead acting Oscars without a Best Picture nomination. So yeah, I think that's part of it. And I do think if like the season were shorter, like Chad probably would have been able to close it out. But then that also means The Father would have been released earlier too. So maybe it wouldn't have made a difference, like people would have still been on the Anthony Hopkins train.
Maybe. I mean, I just think I kind of feel like because the season was shorter, I mean, so long. Excuse me. Imagine if it was shorter, that would have been wild. No, because it was so long. To me, it felt like just the enthusiasm or any kind of like. I think Chadwick would have just won anyway. Like if he even if the father shifted release, just because there was so much coverage of him. I mean, like and like just like all of this stuff. And I think now 2 months after the Globes, basically, if people are just like, yeah, I'm obviously like still very respectful of Chadwick Boseman, but like also like, oh, I like Anthony Hopkins better, basically. And I think there wasn't as much of a necessarily like I need to vote for Chadwick Boseman kind of thing here. It was
Yeah.
more like I just like the performance uh better. And I mean, yeah, like the BAFTA win was very predictive, and so is his Spirit Awards loss. Like those things in hindsight, and like you said, like Ma Rainey underperformed. I I had it, I think, in like maybe like five for Best Picture. I thought it was gonna like a pretty locked in Best Picture nominee before the
It was
nominations.
like at some point in our odds, it was in third. I think that was like
Right.
right when it hit Netflix. And
And
that
like
was
it seemed like it was gonna, yeah,
one.
right. And no screenplay nomination. So obviously it wasn't as strong maybe as like we thought. And then it turned out to not be, even though it won the two craft awards that everybody expected it would for the costumes, which are awesome, and the makeup, which is awesome. Where obviously Viola Davis also lost. I think a lot of experts moved to her, at least in the last like week or
Yeah,
so.
the most experts were predicting her like in the last couple days. Yeah.
So she won at SAG, obviously wasn't nominated at the BAFTAs where Frances McDormand won. And then everybody kind of moved to Viola Davis. And then, yeah, she didn't win either. And there's Frances McDormand up there winning 2 Oscars, like you said. I think you said on either on Slack or in on
5 minutes
Twitter. She won 2 Oscars 5 minutes apart, storms up on stage, gives a couple of good speeches, and goes home. It's like, okay. See you in another 5 years, I guess, Frances McDormand. I don't know. She's or maybe next year for Lady Macbeth, which would be so hilarious that if
Oh my
she's
God,
back
back to
again.
back Best Actress Oscars.
I mean, she'll probably be in contention certainly for like
I
playing
mean,
Lady
she's never
Macbeth.
lost the Best Actress race, only supporting. So,
Unbelievable. Let's talk Best Actress. We spent about 50 hours maybe talking about it over the last like four
like at least
months.
like an eighth of our lives. So
Yeah. How were you? So you flipped a coin. I
I
think
flipped a coin and I moved from Andra, who I had since the SAGs back to Carrie. So you
So I
know,
would love to know, like, A, we'll never know the voting, right? Because obviously, like, they don't release the voting. But I would love to know how close it really was. And I kind of wonder, we spent the like again, hindsight, we spent a lot of time being like film Twitter's favorite was Carrie Mulligan. She was everyone expected her to win. She had a lot of pointers to win. We all were like, oh, she wasn't nominated for BAFTA, but she would have been if it wasn't a jury. Maybe she would have won a BAFTA. They love Promising Young Woman, blah, 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 blah. And then we close it out and she's got her Spirit Award and the Critics' Choice Award. And she really wasn't maybe a contender at all, perhaps. We don't know. I mean, like, but it's surprising that she just didn't get there. And then you have Viola and Francis and Andra Day. I mean, I don't know. I just love to see how that shook out, like in voting. I have
they
no
should have
idea.
ended the show after Joaquin Sector night. They should have just released the Best Actress totals.
Oh, I wish Soderbergh, the one thing I wish he would have done that.
God,
Like,
Steven, come on. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like Carrie, that was, yeah, like film Twitter's favorite. I feel like she was mostly in first, even though she had she took so many hits this season. Because a lot of people are hope dicting her to win too. Like I would have loved to see her win just because it's such an atypical character, like this anti-heroine, to win, Best Actress, and but also like Frances too, like this very subtle performance to win, and especially for a third lead acting Oscar. Um, I think like there just wasn't passion behind any of these nominees, and we've talked about it before, like the math, like if it was pretty evenly divided, it wouldn't have taken the winner, Frances McDormand, that much to beat the other four, like, or the other three, if you're completely counting out Vanessa, like it could have been just a little over 20%.
right.
So it really was like anyone's game here. So and I think like her like cons like weren't as big as the other ones, maybe, and maybe I'm just saying it now in hindsight because she won. But I think the thing that everyone kept mentioning was like she just won 3 years ago for,
That seemed to be like the thing, right?
yeah, but it wasn't but like she and Vanessa were the only ones to hit every precursor, and then she
Hmm.
won one, and then it's like, yeah, you can say she didn't have to beat three of them. The other three actually won hardware, but she's also fronts the Best Picture front runner. So that's another thing. Like if in a fractured race, like go to the film with the most support, which in this case was two, like No Man Land and Promising Young Woman. So you could say like maybe it was between, maybe Carrie was second.
Maybe.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
like, I think in the end, like, I'm sure, I think I predicted all four of them at one point or another. So I'm definitely like all over the place. And I definitely had Francis at least for like a few days, and then switched way off and went to Andre Day and whatever. But I mean, I think at one point I've certainly said, either to myself, talking to myself like I do, or maybe to you, uh, that if you love Nomadland, you love Frances McDormand, right? Because like she's the entire movie, and it's the entire movie is built on her performance. And so, if there was so much support for Nomadland, which obviously there was, it won Best Picture and Best Director and Best Actress, then you're like, obviously, I'm going to put Frances McDormand at the top of the list. She's the whole thing, and like that's why it works. It wouldn't work without her. So I could see it winning, and I mean, like again, like I love that performance. It's my favorite of those five. So I was really pleasantly surprised that she won. I really did not think she was going to win. I thought it would be Andra Day, like I predicted, or Carrie Mulligan, I really thought could win, and maybe Viola Davis, because everybody was saying that she could win. Frances McDormand was like running a cool fourth for me.
And she
So
was not, I just like she's so iconic. Like she doesn't campaign at all. She just casually won two Oscars just like that. Like,
she seemed annoyed because Chloe Zhao gave a nice speech at winning Best Picture, so she won her second Oscar there, and then was like, "And now I give you Fern." She just came up and was like, "No, I'm Fran." She could not. She's like, "I don't, no F's at
oh,
all."
come on. We talk about
So,
that.
so
Yeah, and then like Best Actress, she's like, oh, I have to go up again. Like,
yeah,
I love her so much. Oh god.
so
And
good.
like I do like that she won, and that I like to see, I would like to see more performances like hers win, just like not the typical like transformative, not that there's anything wrong with that performance win, but like I think that's just what we go to, is like the Beatty's performance. And this was like almost like anti-bait. It was like so subtle, and like a lot of detractors were like, she's just playing herself, she's not acting, come on.
Mhm.
And like Anthony Hopkins in a similar way, like it's not very loud. Like I guess it's Beatty in the sense that like he's an old man with dementia, but the choices he makes, it's so like nuanced, and like it reminds me of like Casey Affleck's win, which also went up against a big theatrical performance like from Denzel Washington, another August Wilson play.
Yeah.
So I like that we're seeing these, you know, like less obvious type of choices win. And, in all those years, like you could argue those were actually like the best performances. So I think that's cool. And like it's funny like how, yeah, like Frances and Anthony just won the BAFTA and they they won the Oscars with that. And now Viola Davis, she is the only person with two SAG lead wins to not convert it into an Oscar either time.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
BAFTA ended up, I think, what did it go? 8 for 8 of the top 8 categories. It went 8 for 8, right? Because it won Father won screenplay, Promising Woman won screenplay,
yeah,
Chloe won Best Director, Nomadland Best Picture, and then the four acting. It was the same
it
four
nailed,
acting
nailed
winners.
it. And it stopped its picture matching drought
Hmm.
because it hadn't matched with the Oscars since 12 Years a Slave.
We should have gone all BAFTA. I
I know,
should have
all
just went.
BAFTA. Yeah, but I think that's just another sign that like SAG is becoming like less reliable since the merger with AFTRA like 8 years ago, and like more and more we see like ensemble, which is not a Best Picture award, but there it used to be like a heavier correlation. But now it's just like, we see these like large, like populist type of movies win that. I mean, like Trial Chicago 7 had a chance to win Best Picture, like it was always in the running, but stuff like Black Panther was never going to win Best Picture, but like it
No.
was winning SAG Ensemble.
Mhm.
So, and now, it only matched 2 for 4 with the Oscars, and like in neither lead category either. So, but I always said that even if Chad somehow lost the Oscar, he was the most locked at SAG because that was just something they were totally going to go for, and they gave him 4 nominations. So
You were totally right about that, and we've said that SAG is so big that it just is not maybe as indicative of a precursor as it had been in the past, at least, like how maybe we thought. And this year certainly bore that out. I guess the one thing I think we could talk about the show, which we've talked about, a little, but I'm just like, so they put Best Picture third to last. Steven Soderbergh produced the show. With Stacey Sher, his longtime producer, and Jesse Collins, who produced the Grammys. I think we both like maybe I liked the show. I thought it was good. It definitely was a little flat. I felt like the energy kind of dipped a lot as it dragged on, and then kind of picked up at the end. Um, but they set it up to have Best Picture third to last, which I'm totally on board with because I think we all, even with me predicting Promising Woman, felt very anticlimactic. You knew Nomadland was going to win, right? Like it was like it was really no surprise there. It would have been a surprise if something actually beat Nomadland. And then, so you have that third class, then you have Best Actress and Best Actor. So they roll the dice that they're going to get this great Chadwick Boseman emotional moment, perhaps, to end the show. And it's a total anticlimax because Anthony Hopkins wins and is not even there. So he doesn't give a speech, and the show's over. Uh, I think it's going to get, like we were saying before we started recording, people definitely are not into this show and they're going to criticize it, and they always are going to criticize the Oscars. It's kind of like part of the deal with watching the Oscars, how bad it is. I feel like the same tweets I see every year, how this is the worst Oscars ever and blah blah blah. But I do think it's a bummer that it ended in such a fashion because I think it takes away from Hopkins's win. I think it like also takes away from Chad. This was like it was like the worst confluence of events maybe that it could have been. I don't know. I mean, like, what was your takeaway on how
yeah, I
the
mean,
last 20 minutes ended up?
we talked about this before, and like I also don't mind that they made Best Picture third to last, like for some of the reasons you just said. Like we kind of knew it was gonna be Nomadland, and but when I saw that it was third to last, I was like, Best Picture is last. Like Steven knows this is the one we care about.
Mhm.
But then that wasn't even last, and I was like, this is a mistake. Like you cannot bet on having the Chadwick Boseman moment, because I feel like if you know that like these two, or if you at least know that like actress is competitive, then you should also know that actor is also competitive between two people, and like the other person is not going to be there, like that, so you can't bet on that, and having it end so like deflatingly with like no speech from the winner, and So I think it would have been better if actress was last, and I don't think like Frances's Best Picture speech was better than her actress speech, but at least we still would have gotten a speech. Um, and I I don't know. Yeah, like people are gonna drag it, like the whole production itself, which I like. It started off like on a really high note, like with the Regina King entrance,
Amazing.
like
Regina King
the
entrance is
opening
amazing.
credits. Yeah,
Great. Like I think that was awesome. Everybody was way into it. Questlove doing the music. I was like, this is rules. It felt like a Steven
yeah,
Soderbergh movie. Just like totally. And I actually really liked Union Station as a set. I thought that was cool. And the way
yeah.
they did
They
it.
got like the intimacy right, I felt like, but then they just completely dropped the ball with like the energy and like the visuals, like no clips at all.
So
Which
I was of both minds with the clips. I think sometimes they overdo it with clips. They definitely overdo it with clip montages, even though I know people like the montages. So this year there was none of that, and they had no clips at all, which I think was probably a mistake. I think for some of the categories you maybe don't need clips, right? Like, but like for for the costume design, just show the costumes, right? Like, I mean, like simple things. For the score, how about you just play some of the score, and then like,
yeah, last year they had the orchestra play
right,
segments of the nominees.
even if you have Questlove doing like a mix of it or something, you know what I mean? Because there was no orchestra this year. It seemed like it was just his music, I
Mhm.
believe, right? Like, so it was like anything could have just given it a little bit of a boost that they just decided not to do. Uh, that felt like weird, and then to not even have clips of the actors, I felt like was a miss too. Like,
Yeah, it was. They were going. It's like all the praising of each nominee, like it's nice and everything, but at some point it also gets kind of like awkward, and it's like let's wrap this up.
so
And
they've done that in different ways before. I remember, I forget what year it was, but I remember like maybe it
they
was like 2008 when they had past winners
yeah,
talking about the
that was
nominees.
I actually like that because
Same. Like I thought that was cool, and I liked it this year too a little. But I think it depended on the presenter because some of them obviously were like it's all just reading patter and stuff that's like written for them. Some of them were some of the people who they had hosting those segments were better at it than others. Let's say to like Laura Dern, I thought was fine. I didn't think she was like overwhelmingly good at it, but like Regina King, I thought was great. Like when she was like kind of like talking about the screenplay nominees and stuff. Yeah, like I think it was like hit and miss there. I we said this at like at our our live show like a little I do hope they actually take some of the things from this ceremony next year when I'm sure they'll do like a bigger show when the ratings for this are like absolutely
oh, the ratings
flatlined.
are gonna be like negative.
It's gonna be like
But like
less
we
than
know
10
that
million
already.
people. No, we knew that already, but I think actually it's gonna be like this too. I mean, like
People definitely tuned out after like the first like 20 minutes, probably.
I
Like
think so because there just wasn't enough, just a lack of energy. I don't even need in the past, like the last few years when they had no host, they ended up
oh, I
relying
never need a
on,
host. I do not need a host at all.
I don't need a host either, but they ended up relying on like funny people, let's say, to like anchor some of the
Yeah,
segments.
like
So you'd have
Cameron.
like, Tina Fey and Maya Rudolph and Amy Poehler, like I think a couple of years ago, like open the show. Or like, whoever it is, like just finding funny people to like riff. That's hit and miss too, because we saw that at the Golden Globes and it was a bust, right? Like even with Tina and Amy hosting. But I'm like, I don't know. I just felt like there could have been a little more energy. And like we said, like they decided to do a bit at 10:45 Eastern or whatever it was, with Glenn Close doing a totally hack bit that she somehow made work. I don't even know how she did make it work.
Because she is a legend and she is gonna win an Oscar on her ninth nomination now because of that. So
I feel like she'll definitely win also just because of that. People on Twitter were actually seemingly believing that it was like a spontaneous thing and not totally scripted
well,
50,000 times in
people don't know how
advance.
production works. Come
I
on.
just was
They don't
like,
know what pre-interviews are. Come on.
they were like, oh, wow, how does Glenn Close know debut? And like all these, that's like, guys, it's a bit. They're doing a bit. It's
Yeah.
not real. It's not.
I mean, I will admit, I wasn't really tuned into most of that segment because that
No.
came on the heels of the most devastating loss of
Yeah,
them
I
all.
want you to go for it here. I feel like this is your last stand to talk about
Our
Kusuva.
favorite
Yes.
category that
Yes.
I care more about than Best Actress, Best Original Song, and then our baby, our beloved Husavik, lost to her "Fight for You" from Judas and Black Messiah. Perfectly fine song. Wouldn't mind winning any other year, but Husavik was robbed, like
Totally robbed.
point blank.
I was shocked that Fight for You won. To be perfectly honest, I had it fourth in my predictions
I mean, I don't know where I had it, but I did not have it in first. So
because I think most people expected maybe Speak Now to win, right? That seemed
yeah,
like it was the favorite, and Diane Warren obviously there with IOC, Life Ahead, or Scene from the Life Ahead was another popular pick, and then Husavik, like we both had, and definitely should have won.
and it's just, I mean, like all joking aside, it's just disappointing again. Like they went lazy in the way that it's just another end credit song winning. Like I think like when you think of like, Zendaya kind of like alluded to it in her intro, but like when you think of songs from movies, regardless of whether they won the Oscar or not, like if you hear the song, you want to immediately associate it with the movie. Like when we hear My Heart Will Go On, we'll immediately think of Titanic.
Hmm.
Hear any of the Disney songs, we immediately think like a Whole New World, it's Aladdin. Shallow, A Star Is Born, we just know it. And like no offense to Fight for You, but if you say that to someone a year from now or even 6 months from now, like no one's gonna be like, oh, that's from Judas and Black Messiah. But like
Right.
the niche like Eurovision Song Contest stands, like we know like Husavik is always going to be associated with Eurovision Song Contest. And like you mentioned this on our post show too, like, you know, they should be given the option to vote after the performances.
Absolutely, 100%. If you're watching us right now and somehow haven't watched the Husavik performance, it's on YouTube. The Oscars put
Stop,
it up.
stop watching this right now.
100% pause us. Don't close the window. Pause us and go watch it and come back because it was the best performance of the whole night. It's incredible. I was weeping, just totally in tears. It's so
God,
good.
like
And it would have won.
the
I think if
visuals,
people would
yeah,
have, yeah,
better visuals than the Oscars.
yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of think if you're not gonna like on the post show, I was like, oh, they should actually make people vote. Like I think the Teen Choice Awards does, or whatever, the Kids Choice Awards, or whatever it is, and like you could just do it, like make people vote on their phone
Yeah, yeah,
during
like
the
go
show.
ahead voting like on every like singing reality show, like
Right.
or
But
you
if you don't want to just
yeah,
denigrate the Oscars so much and like totally bottom barrel it, then I mean maybe they should actually do the recording of the performances while maybe especially now if they've opened the door to not having them on the show. Maybe that was just a 1 year thing. But maybe they should actually just record the performances like a couple like around the nominations and put those performances up on the Oscar, like the Academy screening room, and just
instead
you
of the, I
watch
mean, like I
the
mean the other
live performance.
I thought like Husavik had an advantage was like in the portal they isolate the
Right.
clip of the songs as they're used in the movie, and it's the literally the only one that is used in the movie, has a point in the plot of the movie, and the other four are played over credits.
Right.
So if that couldn't even help Husavik, I don't know like what a live. I mean, I think the live performance would present a more like even playing field if
I
they
think
were,
so too.
yeah.
I
But
will
I think
say
still the best one, Husavik.
Husavik should have won. I will say I was nervous when I think we did it during the predictions. We talked about this maybe. I having Will Ferrell so prominently figured in the thing and singing. I wonder if older voters or people who are not fans of Will Ferrell were like, "This is a stupid joke song. Why is he singing?" Because it's like you have this beautiful voice, and like Rachel McAdams is not singing, but she's like lip syncing,
Mario.
obviously. And then all of a sudden, Will Ferrell comes in with the backups, and it just is like in the performance tonight. You have they had a choir of of young girls singing, which was beautiful. And like instead of Will Ferrell, who's doing like Will Ferrell voice, and I wonder if that maybe made people like me like, nah, I'm not doing this. Like Jonah Hill GIF, no, I'm out. I don't want Will
I
Ferrell.
don't. I mean, but like it was just like back and forth. It's not like he had a whole verse, you know.
Right,
And
but I think even anything, I wonder if he's just like, are people like, this is toxic. I don't want this, and like,
I
sure.
mean, like he was just like repeating what she's saying. I don't know. Yeah,
I'd
I
also love to know how did they pick. Uh, it just seems so. It was such a shocking win to me because like if it wasn't going to be Husavik, it felt like it would be Life Ahead, IOC, or a scene or whatever it was, right? Because it's like the other three are really like very similar songs,
with very
all
similar titles.
with very similar titles and very similar messaging and like kind of protest songs or like kind of like those kind of songs from movies that are very socially conscious. I just was like, how do you pick one of those three? Like, I would love to know how Fight for You separated from Speak Now and Hear My Voice. Like, it just is like It's
Yeah,
I would just love to know the
especially
calculus there.
when, Speak Now was the front runner because of Leslie Odom Jr.
Right.
And, everyone assumed, like, and it was the front runner the entire season because everyone assumed, like, One Night Miami was gonna be, like, a bigger player than it was. And, it still got 3 nominations, and he got the double nominations, and, he was working it. He was campaigning really hard these last
Mhm.
couple of weeks. Um, and it did, and, like, on the ballots, when you vote, they don't, unless you're an actor in the acting categories, like, they don't list the people's names. It's just the movie
Right.
title of the song in this category. So I think that, for Diane Warren, I think that hurts her because I clearly the music branch knows what she has written because they nominate her all the
Right.
time. But the Academy at large don't, because, her last couple nominations are for songs that are just kind of like, like, who's heard of them? And I think that hurts her. And but I think, like, people did know that that song was by Leslie Odom Jr., even though
Right.
his name is not listed on there. And I don't know, like, I mean, like, her, yeah, like, she's big in music, and I know, like, some people were like, oh, she won the Grammy a month ago, in a surprise for Song of the
Right.
Year. So maybe that helped her, but
I wonder too, like, I mean, all of these maybe we're going to the movie that they like. I mean, like, if you think about a lot of the stuff we're talking about tonight, it seemingly went to the movie they liked more, right? Like Judas and the Black Messiah ended up being like pretty well liked. Like we saw that it was showing up a lot on the anonymous ballots of like people liked it. Like it was like a strong, it was not ever going to win Best Picture, but people were like, oh, it was usually in the top three. Like a lot of people did seem to like it. And it obviously was going to win for Daniel Kaluuya. It got the surprise Lakeith Stanfield nomination, which we were all kind of like taken aback by. It
no
ends
one
up like
in that movie. So
people, no leads, no, there was no lead actor in that movie. It just seemed like people really liked that movie, and of these song nominees, I think that was the most liked movie. So more people probably were willing to watch it and excited about watching it, maybe than even than Chicago Seven, or obviously One Night in Miami underperformed. Eurovision was a lone nominee, and Life Ahead was a lone nominee. It's like maybe those were just not. They just didn't care. Like they just were like, okay, I
yeah,
like
no,
Juice and
I
the
could
Black
totally see
Messiah.
that, like, that being a lazy vote just for Judas, and they didn't even
Right,
bother clicking play on the videos in the portal.
right.
Yeah.
And also maybe if you didn't even, I mean, like we're really kind of again, like who knows what the Oscar voters do, and I'm sure they are all I'm sure they watch a lot of the movies. I hope, but I mean, like if you're watching Juice and Black Messiah, you might not even know what song it's. I mean, if you don't listen, if you didn't click on the screening portal or you didn't actually listen to the songs, maybe you didn't even know what song it was. There's a lot of music in Juice and Black Messiah. I think
Oh, yeah.
that is
Oh,
like
yeah, like, I can
not the normal like it's not the obvious needle drops. Like Shaka King actually like did such a great job like collecting that soundtrack of like picking different songs that are not overplayed and not like it's not like a no offense no offense to Robert Zemeckis, it's not like a Robert Zemeckis soundtrack, right? Or like a Suicide Squad where it's like the most obvious needle drops in the history of the world. It is like a lot of like interesting songs that maybe people who are not familiar with music would not even know what the her song was. Maybe they thought it was, who knows? Like I just was like I could see it winning in a bunch of different ways, but I just thought that was interesting that it won. I just did not expect it to win.
Yeah, I could see that, like, I mean, yeah, it's not even used in the movie, like, that's the thing, it's not even, like, playing in,
Right.
like, a scene or something. And then I know, like, some people are saying, like, Leslie would win because, maybe people confuse him singing "A Change Is Gonna Come" at the end of One Night in Miami for that song,
Right.
"Speak Now." So, yeah, I guess, like what you said, like, the most, I guess, logical explanation is just, like, they just don't care. It's another year
Right.
of being lazy, and then it's just like Judas was the film they liked the most.
Right. And if you look at the winners here, a lot of these ended up like I mean, like Anthony, I think the father was more liked than Ma Rainey, like in
Oh,
the
yeah,
end.
for sure. It got 6 nominations.
And it got the best picture nomination. Like in the end, like that's maybe like what voters kind of gravitated towards. Same with Nomadland, obviously it won best picture, but I mean, Promising a Woman won best screenplay, like we kind of expected, and that was it. So maybe that was like a carry knock, and like Viola, and then yeah, like there you go. Andre Day was a lone nominee, and that's like of course it's Frances McDormand, and we're gonna like look back and be like, duh, how did that happen?
I
Um,
we would have said that about, like, any of them that had won,
it's
though.
true, it's true. If Andre Day would have won, I'm like,
Orange
of
is
course
gonna be
Andre Day
second
won.
one.
What
Or it'll be Vanessa Kirby.
oh no, never. No offense to Vanessa Kirby, never. Daniel Kaluuya won Best Supporting Actor. Very totally expected,
Yeah,
not
great
unexpected.
speech.
Great speech. So that was actually like thinking of the broadcast. I think in the beginning, this is all in like the first hour. One of the things I think Soderbergh had said in like promotional interviews was like they were not gonna police the speeches, right? There was gonna be no playing off. And I think in the first hour, they must have been like high fiving each other in the control room or whatever, because it really paid off. You had like Thomas Vinterberg gave this really kind of rambling speech that I thought was like not like kind of like if you didn't know who he was or the movie, it was like whatever. And then he kind of like brought in obviously his daughter died in a car accident before the movie. The whole movie is like basically dedicated to her, obviously, and like she was gonna be in it. She played such a big part of its like existence. And it's like this really, really emotional moment that I was like, if they would have played him off while he was like kind of stumbling through the first part of his speech, he might not have gotten there, or he would have rushed through it and you would have lost this like really, really emotional moment. And then on the flip side, you have Dana Kaluuya giving this really great speech and ending up being like, my mom and dad had sex and here I am. And they cut to his mom in England, in London. And she's just like, what the hell? Like, oh my
What?
God. Just an incredible moment. And I was like, wow, this is really paying off. Great job with the no cutting off speeches. And by the end, I was like, oh boy, maybe we should have
Yeah, it just,
some of these up. But
I mean, some of that I think is just the people who won, and
yeah,
them like, they're not, they're nervous, like they're not great like public speakers. I don't blame them. I
no.
probably would just like ramble through a speech, or no, I would just pull like a Mary Beaver and just say like thank you and like bounce. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, those like early speeches were great.
And then
And
it popped up again on Ye Jong Yoon for
oh my God.
Minari. Her speech was the
I mean,
best.
we knew
Just
it was gonna be good though. Okay.
it actually exceeded expectations. Though I thought her speech was wonderful. She was so great, flirting with Brad Pitt, just like talking about. I love I just loved her being like, I loved all the nominees. I was just I was luckier than you. This is the greatest.
So good. And I love like the symmetry of like Regina presenting last year to Brad because he produced Beale Street, and now he presents to Yu Jung Young and he produced Minari. So maybe does this mean like he's gonna win next year? Like in
I don't
supporting.
know. He's got Bullet Train. I think. I don't. Do you think Oscar's
I
gonna
know.
love Bullet Train? I don't know.
I think that's probably lead. He can't go in supporting that. So that's why he has that man bun. So
Oh man, yeah. No, her win was really great and like a really great moment. And I think like that's what the show really. Again, like just talking about the overall show, I think there were like a lot of good moments sprinkled throughout, and it just happened to end on not a low note, because like Anthony Hopkins winning is like really kind of
the
incredible.
result is not a low note.
The result is not a no note. I think the way they set up the result was a low note. I just think ending not if you're not going to know that if they're hoping that Chadwick Boseman is going to win, like you said, like clearly they were paying attention to not if not Gold Derby, like at least like the prognostication of like Best Picture
They
races.
know who won the previous awards.
They know who won the previous award. Like Best Picture was pretty much locked. There was no drama around Nomadland. There was way more drama around Best Actress and some around Best Actor. I just think they overplayed their hand there at the end, and it kind of ends up being like a sour taste. Like people were, it was honestly like the Twitter was just like one big oh no. Like my feed was
Oh,
just
they were
people
already
like
freaking out when Best Picture was third to last. They're
yes,
what the F is happening here? And then like my friend texted me, was like, did I miss Best Actress? I was like, no.
right. And then to have it just like end like that, I mean, I think people were, and again, like we said, I think maybe we talked about this when we were doing predictions. I think if you were just a regular person who has not paid attention to a lot of this, you might have been like, oh, obviously Chadwick Boseman's going to win. It probably you wouldn't even thought that Anthony Hopkins was a contender. And I think if you were just like that kind of person, maybe watching this, you might be like, what the hell is going on? How did this even happen? And he's not
Yeah,
there.
no, that was also the thing. And I'm sure like Twitter is like in flames right now. Like
It seems
about
pretty
that.
rough. I will say I rarely tweet anymore. I just was like,
Are you gonna tweet thing?
I'm not going to tweet, but I did tweet once tonight because I was like, for months, David Sims, who works for The Atlantic, he interviewed Soderbergh like 2 years ago, and he basically he explained what he would do if he hosted or produced the Oscars, and it ended up being like literally the show. People are still mad that I tweeted it because he basically said, I mean, I will read what he said from this tweet.
Okay, please.
Bear with me, but he was like, uh, what he talked about how the Oscars had started talking about maybe doing something like a creative arts Emmys for the Oscars, splitting it up into two shows. which I think would be a bad idea unless they added like 10 more awards or something, right? But
Yeah.
and then he was like, he wanted to produce that show, and here's his quote. He said, "We'll go back to the Roosevelt Hotel. Every nominee can bring a plus one, and that's it. Super intimate, food, drink, and all that. You can get up there and talk all you want. It's not televised. It's a private event for the nominees and their significant others. Make it fun and cool. Because here's the dirty secret: going to the big thing is not fun. It's more fun to watch on TV. The trick would be doing something super cool and small." So he basically did the show he wanted for himself in Hollywood and not for the viewers. And I think that's why people are mad, because it was just like he kind of did a show that I think people in the room seemed to really enjoy. Like honestly,
I
like
mean,
anytime
I
they
hope
cut to the
so, like,
crowd,
the energy was, like, way down, so I hope they had some fun
I
in.
hope they had to do something. Yeah, but I mean, they seemed fine with it. Everybody seemed like totally fine. Like Glenn Close was dancing, right? Like that's great. I don't know. So I'm like, he did the show he wanted, and I think if it had just ended differently, I think people would have been like, it was fine. And I think the way it ended here, people are going to be like, definitely second guessing Best Picture, going third to last. Definitely upset that that Chadwick Boseman, the posthumous Oscar possible win, was leveraged for like a television moment, and it kind of exploded in their face. I just
You
am.
can't do that, like, that's just, like, producing 101, like, like, unless you know the result, you can't do that. Well, now we know that they don't know the result,
We
so,
definitely know they don't know the result.
yeah.
I was wondering. I think who was saying this before on the post show that we did,
Oh,
that
Nick,
Joaquin, maybe Nick was saying he had the envelope open when he came out. Is that right?
I did not
Or
notice that, I have to go back to see, so.
I have to go back and see too. I kind of wonder if they maybe. I mean, they'll know. I would love. I look forward to reading tomorrow, or if you're watching, I look forward to reading Monday and Tuesday, like interviews. I'm sure they'll do post game interviews or like post mortems about what happened and like how much they knew or didn't know at the very end. Because I wonder if they actually. Is it possible they could have looked before? Like they didn't know,
Well, I
obviously.
mean, after Envelope Gate, we know that there's 2 sets of
Right.
envelopes with the winners, so presumably they still have that this year, and they gave Joaquin 1. So,
Right.
I think, I would assume they tell them you can't open it until you're saying, "And the Oscar goes to," but maybe he did. I don't know. I have to go back and see if he actually had it opened. But, I mean, I
I
do
also.
when like Meryl Streep presented Best Actor to Daniel Day Lewis for Lincoln, and she had opened it while the clips were playing. Because then, like, as soon as like
Right.
the clips ended, she was just like, "And the Oscar goes to Daniel Day Lewis," and it was like
Right.
completely anticlimactic,
Right.
like no suspense. And then he just had to get up, and like Hugh Jackman could like barely clap, you
It's
know.
amazing. That was
So
the. I mean, that's like the problem with the way it ended, was it's just an anticlimax, and I think we talked about that too on the thing that Chloe Zhao winning Best Director should have been like a humongous. It was a historic win, like even if it was so obviously going to happen and like nobody expected any other results. Uh, it still felt like they kind of just rushed through that, and I was. A part of me was like, maybe that's cool because like it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like a special thing that a woman a woman of color can win best, best director. That's like it should. It's ridiculous that it is, but at the same time, it is a big thing, and I think like they should have celebrated slightly more. Because I just remember like when Catherine Bigelow won, it was like a humongous thing. Like they had Barbara Streisand, like she was like so like you know what I mean. She was like so smugly excited, and like it just felt like a big thing. I know it wasn't going to be like that this year because they didn't have the big crowd, but it
I mean,
just kind of like
I love Bong Joon-ho's whole presentation. Sharon Choi
great.
came back.
All that was great, but I just wish she would have like gotten a little bit more of a moment. I guess I don't know. I just was like, oh, that
Yeah,
like
it was again like kind of just, it felt kind of deflating. It was just kind of like, oh, just like another like win. And yeah, it was a historic moment, and it came so early. I would have saved it for the second half of the show.
it felt like it should have been the second half.
Yeah, and we talked about this before too. Like we think the only standing O was for Tyler Perry. Like I think if this had been in a theater in the Dolby, that she would have gotten the standing ovation. Like I think people
Yeah,
in there know, but it
yeah,
was just like some like disconnect. Like they all know there's only been one female directing winner.
right. You would have to,
Like they don't
right?
know like other stats, but they definitely know that Catherine Bigelow was the only one until tonight. And maybe they felt like it was weird, like they couldn't stand up because there was like tables and like
I
food.
don't
I
know.
don't know, but and maybe they just had more time to build up to the Tyler Perry thing because they had the whole like montage and like the segment for him. Um,
Yeah, it was interesting because like I felt like a lot of, again, like in the promotion and the lead up to this, and obviously tonight, they put a premium on like celebrating the artists and the work, and like that was like the big thing. Like he was like Soderbergh was like, too often it's not about like the people who make this stuff, and it's got to be more about the people who make the stuff and why they like doing this and that. And you got that with like, you know, everybody talking about like the movies that made them fall in love with movies and all these different things, and like, and yet at the same time, the way Chloe Zhao won, and obviously the way it ended with Anthony Hopkins not even giving a speech, it just felt like such a, it just felt like a bummer that you're actually not
Yeah,
celebrating the work as much as maybe you could have in these big wins and shocking upsets. Like I just was
yeah,
like, ugh,
and it goes back to them not using clips for most of those categories, and like there are not enough visuals.
right,
Like the whole thing of like talking about like, what inspired them again in filmmaking, their favorite films and whatever. Like they did that 4 years ago, Envelope Gate again. Like when they had, I mean, it was a whole setup for like the Jimmy Kimmel Matt Damon joke of him
mhm,
like roasting We Bought a Zoo again. But they did have those segments of like, like a modern like actor like, talking about like their favorite film or favorite performance that got him in acting. Like it was like Charlize Theron talking about Shirley MacLaine in The Apartment, and then they both came
mhm.
out to present something. Like Javier Bardem talking about like the bridges of Madison County, and he and Meryl Streep came out to present something. Like that was well done, and they were visuals because it was like a whole segment. Yeah, that takes up time, but it was still more interesting than just constantly hearing people talk without any visual,
Yes.
you know? So
Uh,
if they were gonna do that, I think they should have done, something like that with like a video package for it.
Well, I was thinking too, when again, talk like looking at some of the stuff he had done, talked about before the show, Soderbergh. Like he had, they did a bunch of interviews with all the nominees. They talked about that they were like, oh, we're doing like like they're basically we're doing like video interviews, I'd imagine, with like all the nominees to like ask them like about the stuff
Yeah,
they
and like
liked, right?
Regina referenced that. Like,
And
yeah,
I was expecting, I don't know, have you seen High Flying Bird? You ever watched that?
no.
So it's his Soderbergh movie on Netflix. Great movie. Totally love it. Andre Holland should have got a Best Actor nomination last year, but that's beside the point. Uh, in that movie, they cut in, he interviewed like actual NBA players about being in the NBA. And it's like, he kind of wanted to do that with Moneyball too. When he was going to direct Moneyball, he like did like his idea was like to interview baseball players and like cut in like documentary footage basically. And I just was expecting that with this, and I think it would have mixed it up to have like, how did he, did they talk to, I don't know, did he talk to Anthony, did they do an interview with Anthony Hopkins? They could have mixed in something like,
It was
I just
all
was like
via email, okay.
maybe even emailed and show the you know what I mean, like I was like there, I was expecting more of that visual flair, and I think the opening with like the Regina King walking through set up more of an idea that there would be more of a visual Oscars. And while they did like kind of, move things around and like move the camera angles around a little for the speeches, it still was like ended up being like a regular award show by the end. So that was a bummer.
Yeah, no, that was kind of what I was expecting when Bong Joon-ho was like, "Oh, I asked them to explain
Mhm.
directing in 20 seconds." I thought they were gonna play like clips of them
Would have been great. Not
playing.
that we,
He was just, yeah,
not
explaining. It
that,
was
yeah,
also great because it forced people to read 1 inch subtitles, but
yes,
yeah, it was just it needed something more to keep people's attention.
right.
And I don't know, I think I said this last week or maybe I don't know offline to someone, but or not even last week, but like post nominations, but I felt like like we know the ratings are gonna suck, and so they should just focus on making the best show possible for like Oscar nuts like us, like the people who care, not like the masses, because you're not gonna get like 50 million viewers
Right.
anymore. Like you should focus on making it for us, and like to everything you said, like it sounds like he made the show he wanted, and he didn't think about the core audience, us even.
No, it's funny. He made it not for the normal. He didn't make it for the people who are like watch the Oscars and never go to the movies or like see one movie a year.
Yeah.
But he also didn't make it for like the people who obsess over the Oscars or anything. Because I think he just made it for like. I mean, I guess he really made it for famous people in the room, right? Like that was his main priority, was like to be like, I want them to feel like embraced and loved and this and that. I would say like, I think we should wrap up here because it's getting late. But I will say one last thing before we do. they made a big deal about how it was, obviously this Oscars is coming here at in a pandemic, and like people are still not going back to the movies in like any significant or as much as they had previously. And I think, there's hope that like later this summer they'll be going to see Fast 9. Seemingly it's like the first big one that's coming out, I think. Or maybe they'll see like In the Heights, even though it's on HBO Max. Those two movies will probably be pretty good. They come out in June, assuming more people will be vaccinated and this and that, and they'll be like somewhat not back to normal, but like going places. I found it interesting. I think it's possible only Frances McDormand mentioned going to the movies. And was that it for her Best Actress piece, or was that for her
That was
Best
for
Picture?
Best Picture, because she was like, you should see this on the biggest screen possible, and
Yeah.
then take people to see movies when theaters open again. I think that was the gist of it, I think.
And I was just shocked that like nobody else said that. I understand like that's fraught politics, if you don't want to like put people in danger and like kind of like all these things, but I'm like, it is, if you're celebrating movies, certainly uh in an industry that is just, like not the no box office last year, obviously, and like, who knows what's even gonna happen. So many things are streaming, like going to the movies. I think Nomadland, like, I'm glad it won, but I think if it would have lost, I would have said it's because people didn't get to see it in the movie theater. Because if you're watching on your laptop or at home, it just doesn't have the same impact as it would in a dark theater. I stand by that, even though it won. I still think it would have been a better experience seeing in theater. And I'm
Is
like,
that why I lost cinematography?
I mean, maybe, right? Like, I don't know. I still don't know how it lost cinematography, to be perfectly
I can't
honest,
believe
even though I
they
love Meg.
Oscars.
Oh my god. But yeah, I was like shocked that nobody else mentioned going to the movies except for Frances McDormand of all people. I would not have even expected her to do that, frankly. But I was like, oh, she's like, go to the movies. I think that
Last
was
time
like
it was
great,
inclusion rider. This time,
right? That's right. Go buy popcorn at the movies.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I I had that like double take too when she started talking about that. I was like, yeah, like I don't think anyone else had mentioned that like at
Not
all.
really. I don't even. I
They were
mean, like,
talking for a very long time. All these people, they're speaking.
so many. I think the My Octopus Teacher winners are still talking. Actually,
Oh God.
that one, I will say, like, this is obviously now this Oscars will be remembered for the Chadwick loss and the Anthony Hopkins win. But I think for a while, on at least on my Twitter feed, the only thing people were talking about was how much they did not like the My Octopus Teacher win, and how much they were just disappointed by that result in Best Documentary. But we all knew it was going to win. That's why I was like, it
Yeah,
didn't seem
no, we
like
said this last week. It was what the people wanted.
right. But
It,
people did not, not the people on my Twitter feed, at least, did not
yeah,
want it. They wanted time or something
there is
else.
just something about this. It's like Bohemian Rhapsody, it just struck a chord with people and they voted for it. So, you have some very deserving like lead acting winners, and then you have, an octopus winning an Oscar. So
So let's wrap up here. Any last words about the Oscars or this Oscar season or anything? I mean, like,
oh my God, I can't believe it's over and we're almost in May.
it's amazing. And now we are so excited. The next run of movie. I'm like,
I
what
don't
will be
but
the
see, the
front
thing with
runner?
me is like I don't even pay attention to the next thing until like the current season is over, but that's usually like in February. And but it's like a quarter of the year is already over.
It's absolutely wild. We saw one movie trailer tonight for West Side Story, which is definitely positioning itself as the best picture contender for this year. Next year, it comes out in December of this year. Steven Spielberg's,
Which is delayed from 2020.
that
So
was pushed back to now, and looked very cool. Spielberg. It sounded like West Side Story. I'm in. I guess frankly looked a lot like In the Heights, which also had a trailer tonight. Maybe one of those movies. We'll be talking about them for the next year. I don't know.
I don't well, yeah, I hopefully it won't be a full 12 months. Like I
No,
think
hopefully it's like 10
they'll
months.
go back to February. Like they haven't officially announced that, but it needs to be back to normal.
I mean,
Like
certainly,
just be a short year.
I think so, and I think they proved. I thought an interesting thing about the broadcast was that or the ceremony. It seemed like they really were able to, between vaccinations and testing and all these different protocols, it seemed like they were able to basically pull off. You could have watched that if you were totally, from another planet and came down to Earth and said, "What is going on right now in the world?" and watched the Oscars and then watched another Oscars. You'd be like, "Well, obviously it's different, but there's no it was not like you wouldn't be able to tell it was during a pandemic. Let's say it was just a different show. Like they didn't do a lot of uh,
Yeah,
like
no masks during
no
this.
mass, and it felt like more of a show. So I'm like, if they could do that next year, maybe they go back to Dolby and
Yeah,
do it in
I
10
do see
months.
some points for having it in person and not trying to do it over Zoom like, all these other shows had to do. But, they also got lucky that it was, they're because they moved it because it was last and, a lot of people are vaccinated now. Um, but I don't even know if I would consider it the best award show we've had in the pandemic. Like I thought the Emmys last year was great.
I
I
was
know,
still gonna say it's amazing that the Emmys was actually the best one. It
yeah,
happened in
yeah,
September somehow.
yeah.
It's
Um,
great.
And like I know people like the Grammys too, and they were kind of going for that same kind of vibe, I guess. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
I
amusing
would
to
rank
me.
it.
The Emmy. It's amusing to me that the Emmys ended up being so
And it was
like forgotten, kind of, because I'm
and it
like
was
they.
like basically the first one, if you don't count like the daytime Emmys, which had like
Yeah,
3 shows. So
yeah, it was
yeah,
super funny. They did a really good job of getting like good equipment to
I know
people. I
Jennifer
mean,
Aniston almost burned the place down.
yeah, that was awesome. It was really fun. Uh,
Yeah, but then like the Globes, like oh my gosh,
Globes was a disaster. SAG Awards was pretty rough.
because it was pre-taped.
Spirit Awards, I think, was rough. The little I saw, I'm just like
Well, they
so,
started at 10 p.m. too, which
which
I
is a no
never
non-starter
like
for
any of
us.
these. Yeah.
Right.
BAFTA was okay-ish, but it was still like I don't know. It was like a neutral ceremony.
Right. Joyce, this has been fun.
I can't believe it's
Talk.
over.
It's finally over. We did it. We made it. We did it. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Good night.